That said, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. Open forum. Is anybody here would like to speak? All right. Consent agenda, approval of the minutes, approval of the bills, purchase orders, approval of the investments, ambulance department bad debt, fire department bad debt, pay app number 7 for Mission Mechanical for the HVAC for the city, for City Hall. Police officer step increase, and then there's a pay app number 2 to Mark Lee for Fifth Street Improvement Project. Can I get a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. We are on to 5, which is a public hearing. It is 6:02 PM. Public hearing to abate nuisance to City of Melrose Code Section 93.21.
Good evening. Just for note, we had originally scheduled hearings for 2 nuisance violations. Chief Mouse reports that one of those nuisances has been abated, so we would be canceling the hearing on the violation at 102 Rose Park, which then when you get down to your action items, that resolution 2020-38 will not be necessary. So we're strictly looking at the violation at 72 Rose Park. Same process we were through earlier this year. Chief Mouse regularly inspects the conditions in the community. When he sees a nuisance violation, he notifies the owner of the property. In this case, this was the middle of May that Chief Mouse spotted this. Written notice to the property owner went out May 19th. Chief Mouse went back and re-inspected it. There was no improvement. And a second written notice went out on the 9th. Again, after going back for another inspection and still no improvement, we set this on for hearing. The hearing notice was posted on July the 29th, and the property owner was personally served with a notice of the hearing that same day. If you look at it, I mean, it's, you know, part of a problem we've been having here in the community. You see there's a vehicle there, hasn't moved in a long time, appears to be inoperable. If you look closely at the tabs, they're expired. The tab expired in apparently last October. So in your agenda package, you would have gotten copies of Chief Mouse's report and the letters that he had sent to the property owner. And you can see, I also asked Chief Mouse to go out and take fresh pictures. You know, the original ones were from last May, but then there's some additional pictures from.
The second picture is June, and that the pictures from the final picture here is from this morning.
Yeah, just this afternoon. So you can see May, June, and then this afternoon, basically no change. So we would again be asking then when you get to the action items that you would adopt an order directing the owner to abate this nuisance. We'll have Chief Mouse serve that order on the property owner. If they don't respond to the council's order, then we would be filing it with the court and getting the court's permission to just go in and abate the nuisance and assess the costs back to the owner. Chief Mouse, do you have anything to add?
No.
That's all on this one, unless anybody else has a question or wants to speak.
All right. So now if anybody in the audience wishes to speak, it is, it's open to the public. All right. It is 6:06. We will be taking action on this in just a little bit. All right, we're on the reports. Chief Mouse?
Good evening. Our July 2020 numbers. In traffic, we had 29 citations, 50 verbal warnings, 1 written warning. For July 2020, we had 278 calls requests for service. Last year was 346. In July 2019, we had ended on ICR 2666, and this year is 2046. So we're down about 620 calls overall from last year. 29 agency assist calls, which has been consistent in the 20s and low 30s. An area to note for the public, by the time this airs and gets out there, we should be seeing some school traffic in the morning, so be aware of bikers, walkers, extra vehicles, and buses floating around, generally between 7:35, 7:40 until about 8:15, 8:20. 3 different areas of town. Obviously, we have our public schools, the busiest area, St. Mary's, and then the ALC. So just a good reminder for everybody that there's going to be some increased traffic, even though the school schedule or whatever's going to look a little bit different. There's still going to be bodies moving around. So hoping not to have any issues with that. Like last year seemed to be pretty good for us overall for the whole year, even though it was a partial year, but just hoping to continue that. Any questions?
No. Scott?
As you can see from my report, my work for the city lately is dominated with nuisance enforcement. The first item refers to the hearing we just had, and then the item that will be coming up on the agenda under the action items. The second item is referencing another problem out at Rose Park. It'll be under old business, and we can talk about that at length when it comes up in the agenda. The last item, with the city center opening up, people do rent the space here at the city center, and we have a lease agreement for the city center or the park if they're using the park facilities, and so that was work done to really kind of modify those lease agreements by adding this language here with a liability waiver. The aim is really was to make sure we have it in writing that people using the facilities agree that they're going to abide by the city's, procedures and protocols for, trying to reduce or stop the spread of the COVID-19. And it also then says that, hey, you're using it at your own risk. The city doesn't know who's coming in with your group and what their exposure is. If people get sick, you agree that it's not the city of Melrose's fault and you'll indemnify us. We've also, we've worked on incorporating that into the rental agreements. We also have modified it so that it could be signed as a standalone agreement if we just had individuals, coming in to use the facilities instead of a group. So that got put in place, I think, shortly after the last meeting. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Scott. General Fund Financial Quarterly Reports, Tessa?
Good evening. Okay, so our general fund revenue is at about 36% of the budget as of June 30th. A portion of our property taxes come in July, so those are not showing here. However, it should be noted that when we did receive that first half settlement through July, it did come in at over 50% of our levy, and that was attributed to some prepayments or payments in full of the taxes for the year, as well as collections on some delinquent taxes. So we were curious to see with COVID how it would play into our tax collection. For the first half settlement, we seem to be right on track. Also worth noting, the reason the revenue budget for half the year is a little low is our local government aid. The first payment was received in July, so that's not reflected in these balances. And our property taxes and local government aid make up about 75% of our total budget, so that's our big revenue stream. Our building permit revenue was slightly low the first half of the year. It's about 27% of budget. We expect more of those fees to be coming in through the summer months, so in the third quarter. The fees relating to the building permits are paid out in July, so those are not shown in here. We have some larger payments that are made at year end, including or that are received at year end, including admin services from our fire and ambulance hall and some street maintenance revenue from Stearns County. Our overall expenditures are at 43% of budget, so those are pretty close to on track. Like I said, the building inspector fees are paid in July, so those are covered in third quarter, and then half of our large transfers are made at the end of the year, and some various operating transfers to our special revenue funds are done at year end. Our MATA fund has had fairly minimal activity for the first half of the year. We had not had any TIF transfers in or the general fund transfers. Those are done at year end. Our ambulance department is right on track. Revenue is 54% of budget and expenses are 51% of budget. There were some maintenance expenses early in the year for some fresh air intakes that caused the maintenance fees to be slightly higher than expected. Our fire department fund, the revenue is at 27%. A lot of the contract charges are received in December from the city and the townships. And expenses are at 63%. Usually those in typical years run slow because all of the salary payments are made at year end. However, there were some large equipment purchases that were made. With that, there were some grants or some donations received as well. Additionally, as with the ambulance, there were some larger maintenance costs during the year for the fire fund, and there were higher legal expenses than average due to some grant writing that was done. Our special revenue funds had very minimal activity throughout the year so far, and the capital projects funds, the first half of the set-aside transfers were done, which make up the large portion of the revenues for that. The expenses come in at 12% of budget. Most of our street projects were started later this summer, so those will be coming in third quarter. There was some maintenance work for the city center skylight as well as the HVAC system as well. And the street department split a purchase of a new water truck with the water department. Our debt service funds, the expenditures are at 98% of budget. We have the principal payments have been made, and the first half of all interest payments were made. So we have one interest payment remaining to be made this year. Otherwise, everything seems to be moving along fairly well.
All right. Thank you, Tessa. Community Development Director, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening. The city's had 63 permits that have been issued for building permits this year. 21 have been completed already, and those records are of yesterday. 17 permits were first quarter, 24 second quarter, and 22 have been issued so far for third quarter. We've seen an increase just in the last couple days. There's been 1 new house permit and 8 new garages. Our total valuation is over $1 million. Included in this packet is the first, second, and third quarter comparables between 2019 and 2020. And we're at 58% of third quarter, and the percentage of 2020 to 2019 is 81%. So we're just a little bit below what 2019 was. Also included for your reference is a list of the projects, the larger projects for first, second, and third quarter of both years to help give some context to the numbers. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the Munson Height variance request at their meeting on July 27th, 2020. That'll be on your agenda tonight. The Planning Commission at their next meeting has a request from Tom Skirvold that will allow a single-family home to be placed on a lot that is 6,500 square feet in size that will replace the fire fire demolished home that was removed from the lot several years ago at 306 2nd Street Southeast. So that'll be on the August 31st Planning Commission agenda as a public hearing. Also on your agenda tonight is the zoning ordinance amendments that the Planning Commission considered at their last meeting. They recommended changes to the accessory structure and the surfacing ordinance requirements. MATA has, they met on August 13th and recommended that the city move forward with grants for local businesses to help with negative impacts from COVID-19. We've seen eight applications come in for approximately $41,007. The project has approximately $300,000 that we anticipate allocating towards it. So if all of the projects that get funded, it's a two-part program. So the first part is primarily $7,500 to each of the local businesses that apply that have COVID-19 impacts, and it's a fairly strict list of what elements can be reimbursed through that first program. And then we have a second program that is also part of the grants program. So it's a twofold program, and the second part has a little more leniency in how it can be awarded because it's not using some of the funds that are strictly CARES Act funds that are awarded through the county. And I think Colleen's going to elaborate a little bit on the dollar amounts of that in a bit here. But I will say for the second part applications, we've seen about 144,000 requested. So between the two programs, we have about 160,000 that hasn't been requested, assuming that everything was to be funded. That's kind of where that's at. Also, we've now seen 4 emergency revolving loan funds year to date for 40,000. We haven't seen any of those come in the last month, and we recently did a rehab forgivable loan for 5,000 for the proposed daycare. So that's kind of the status of where things are at for that. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. City engineer report, Mr. Mike.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we've been continuing to work on the pavement management program, kind of going through some stuff with Gary. If the budget projections or proposed budget holds up for next year, I think our next step would be to probably get some pavement cores in the areas that we're looking at overlay to ensure that the underlying bituminous is in good shape enough to overlay. So we don't need to do that this month, but as we move forward, if there's a confident feeling from the council and staff that we will move forward with some overlays, we should get those done so we can get those out for bids a little bit earlier this year. So the County Road 65 drainage improvements, I did contact the contractor again, and he is well aware of his obligation to make the correction. They're just kind of waiting for a little bit lull in their other work. We do hold back, or are holding back $10,000, so they do have some incentive to get back here. So the 2020 street improvements, 5th Street, 4th and 3rd Avenue, they're up there today finishing raising iron. There were a couple of gate valves that they missed that they have to bring up to elevation. Then they're paving the side streets, pulling it out to the main through lanes today, and then tomorrow, if everything goes well, they should have it all paved by the end of the day tomorrow. So, are there any questions on that project?
Good. All right, should be good. Thank
Okay.
you, sir.
The bridge, I don't have a real good update. I didn't have an opportunity. I tried calling Jody, the project manager. She was out this week, and I didn't have an opportunity. Their written update said that they've gotten comments back from the DNR, and they're updating their computer program and sending that back in with comments for a second revision. So, Colleen, I don't know if you have any more of an update on that.
No, not really, other than we're still working with the DNR.
Having fun. So that's about all I've got, unless there's questions on anything else.
Nope. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
City Administrator report?
Just 2 items, and then I have some additional items further on the agenda. We have met with both the labor union for the police department and the labor union that represents the public work employees. And we have tentatively agreed to both of those contracts for 2021. What we are waiting on now is health insurance information, and once we have that, we're hoping to bring those final contracts back to City Council and the PUC for approval either in September or October. They went pretty well. I think that we didn't really have too many sticking points, and so relatively smooth negotiations. As far as the City Council elections, Councilmember Justin Freeler and Councilmember Tony Klassen both have council terms that will be expiring on December 31st, 2020, leaving 2 seats up for election in November. Both Councilmember Freeler and Councilmember Klassen have filed for election, along with Jolene
Wheeling.
Yep. So that's what I have for now, Mr. Mayor.
All right, sounds good. All right, we are on to action items. We are gonna go to D, and that will be with the Melrose Fire Department. Due to Councilmember Hill and I, potential conflict of interest, this will be turned over to Vice Mayor Clausen.
All right, 7D, resolution number 2020-40, resolution opting to increase the benefit level for firefighters who are vested in the voluntary statewide volunteer firefighter retirement plan. Chief Buddy, would you like to give us a little background on that?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Within your packets, you guys should have received a summary report from myself on some information that I gathered to hopefully answer some of your questions, and then also the predictions of where things lay from the para themselves. As Mr. Clausen said, we're seeking a request to increase our service level, our service per year service from up to $2,600. This would put us at 107% funded, which from the past couple of years, talking with Tony, had some concerns of keeping it above the 100% and going around that 105 and 107%. So we are meeting that obligation. As we all know, the markets were rough at the beginning of this year, and then that was wasn't last year, but a couple years ago, I remember standing up here talking, or it might have been previous chief, of what's this going to look like when we hit a rough market, and they did very well. I mean, they've held their own, so which is nice to see. One thing I don't like to publicize very much, but just again, doing our dual research, what does it look like amongst other fire departments in our area? So within there, I went and contacted Sauk Center and Albany, and both of them are within the range. We're at Sauk Center's at 2,300 this year, and Albany is at 2,500. So both of those, I'd like to note, are self-administered. So they are not part of the PARA program, which it's just their funds. When we're part of the PARA program, it's everybody's that's a part of this program. So there's a couple $1 million that they're playing with and get to have fun with. So just knowing that those get a little more attention than I think some of the smaller amounts. Just to recap where the funding is coming from, we have the state puts in the 2% money from our insurance, and every year we've been seeing an increase in that, and that's just due to the buildings, the increase that we're seeing within our area, within the town of buildings are Genio adding on, so their fire insurance gets increased a little bit. The city of Melrose contributes a little bit, and then the other big portion of it is the interest, the net interest from the funds. So the nice thing, seeing that the increase this year is a little bit more, we've been down. We've been down 23, 24 guys this year. So so we got to try and hold on to the guys that we have. Retention's a big thing. We lost 2 long-term employee, I don't want to say employees, but firemen this year, 22 and 26 years of service, so it takes a bite. But that being said, even though we're down guys, the fire money and the money that the city contributes gets spread out amongst fewer guys then, in a sense. So we don't have the full 30 guys, so it's down to that. But a couple other side notes, retirements. Question is, well, what kind of retirements are we going to have this year? The plans that you guys have been placed in front of you do already subtract out the 2 guys that retired this year. So that's already factored into the equation. No one has said anything to me yet on retirement. And then we brought in 5 new guys. We got approved a couple months ago, 5 new guys. The first 5 years, they're not invested with this at all, so it takes them a few years before they get invested into the program, and then, as you know, it's 20 years to be fully invested. So if they were to quit anytime between year 1 and 5, that money that they had, pool of money that they've earned, gets put back into the pot that distributed. So, questions that you guys have that didn't get answered, or?
Well, looks good to me. I think back when my concerns were, was because it was a new program, we hadn't been through a stock market correction to see how it was going to affect the fund. That's why I had bigger concerns. And actually, this past 20% blip we saw, I actually did ask Colleen to get the numbers, and it looked like it did not kill the fund the way, it didn't go down 20%.
Right.
So it gives me a much better comfort level knowing that the fund is not going to get too underfunded in a major stock market correction or whatever. So, because if it does get underfunded, then the general fund has to pick up the additional expense to that retirement fund. So that goes directly onto the taxpayer. So,
Yeah, you are
so
correct.
that's where,
Sure.
yeah.
A valid concern, a
Right.
very valid concern, since it's, we are part of the city and part of the townships,
Right.
that we would have to share that expense
Right.
amongst them as well. And
But
that's,
I think the level you requesting is reasonable, and it's still 107% funded after that, so. Any other questions? Okay, I guess it's just you and I, Justin, so you want to make a motion? I'll
make a motion
second.
2,600.
To approve the resolution number 2020-40, opting to increase the benefit level for firefighters. Call for a motion. Got a motion, a second? I second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay. Motion
Due
carried.
to conflict, Mr. Acting Mayor, I will abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Turn it back to you, Mayor.
All right.
Mayor Friedman.
Yeah, I think Chief was looking at both of us on that one. I think between you and I is about 60 years worth of involvement with the fire department.
Just us two. That's what my question was. I wasn't sure if that's majority of present.
I kind of thought the same thing.
So if one of them was to leave temporarily, then it would be 2 out of the 3, right?
Is the extension role different than?
Have to table it till next month.
Next month? Okay.
Sorry, I thought the extension did not count towards it, so I thought as long as they had the majority, because they did ask, right? So sorry, that was.
Okay. All right. Is that going to be soon enough to do whatever we need to do as far as get it into next month? Okay. So should I make or should Justin make a counter motion to, how would we handle that then? As far as getting it tabled to next month?
Mr. Clausen, I think you can just rescind your motion and table it until next meeting.
Can you do that, Justin?
Justin would have.
Justin would have to do that.
Motion until next meeting.
Good.
Yep.
All right. So now we're on to resolution number 2020-37. Resolution ordering the abatement of nuisance conditions located at 72 Rose Park, Melrose. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Then B for lot 102 has been canceled. So we're on to 3. Resolution number 2020-39, resolution approving case number BAR-7-2020-104. Application for the variance from the maximum height requirements in the I industrial zone district.
Motion to approve?
Okay. Did you?
Oh, you gotta talk about it.
I can if you'd like.
Sorry.
The request before you tonight is to add a second grain bin on the existing Munson Feed Company site located at the southwest corner of Railroad Avenue and 3rd Avenue Northwest. There's an existing 65-foot diameter larger grain bin. They're adding the smaller 48-foot diameter grain bin. They'll both be the same 85 feet high. There was a variance for the first one, and also there was a variance for the grain leg that's 130 feet, and those were approved in 2016. The public hearing was held in July by the Planning Commission. Neighbors all signed a petition of support and have no concerns with the proposed variance request. The Planning Commission does recommend approval. The conditions for that are included in the resolution.
I'll second Bunkers.
All right, first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. And thank you for all you do for our community as a business. We really appreciate Munson Feed quite a bit. So, thank you. All right, so now we are on to E, Police Department hire.
We are looking to add Reese Regal as a part-time officer to our department. Right now, we have one active part-time officer. One's out on surgery, another one's out on maternity leave, and we're looking to add somebody that maybe would have a bit more availability with our department. Reese has been a reserve with us for about 20 months or so. Been very active, contacting our officers for ride-alongs, wanting to learn and know what he's gone to school for. And now we're hoping to get his license activated and get him in the car to be functional for us, as opposed to being a question and answer person in the seat next to us. So if you are to approve him, we will make a job offer contingent upon successful psychological and pre-employment physical.
All right. Any questions or concerns?
We'll make that motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, we are on to F, an ordinance amending section 500 parking, loading and storage regulations, and 600 general regulations of zoning ordinance number 1989-1-A, as amended and adopted by reference as chapter 153 of the Melrose City Code. Lisa?
Thank you. Yes, the Planning Commission considered a couple of amendments to the ordinance, to the zoning ordinance, that is. The first is which access ways from a gravel alley to a garage parking space would be allowed under their recommendations to be gravel. They considered allowing gravel accessing a cement parking pad, but they did not find that that would be appropriate. Because they had concerns about the limits that we would have to, in that regards, because our ordinance does not limit the impervious surface coverage. So hypothetically, there could be a fair amount of gravel, more than neighbors might like to see. So that's why the recommendation is as it is. The accessory structure section of the ordinance, the state statutes changed to allow up to 200 square feet accessory structures without a building permit, and we're just changing our ordinance to reflect that. The planning commission found that that was appropriate. We also just modified the language a little bit to clarify some questions that come up from time to time regarding kits that are used, and also regarding the roof line. It was kind of worded a little bit differently, and it's a little more clearly worded, but the regulation hasn't changed. The handout that goes out to anyone who's interested in getting accessory structure is included in your package just for your reference, and we've had no issues with people understanding the different sizes and what they mean. So, are there any questions?
Nope.
Great.
Can I get a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And then on to G, which is resolution number 2020-41, bonding resolution. Are you gonna?
Because the state is in the midst of a bond sale that requires a pause on any changes to the fiscal situation, this blackout period made it impossible when the legislators convened on August 11th or August 12th for their one-day session to do anything with the bonding bill. The legislature actually has failed repeatedly to actually pass a bonding bill, even though they really are in agreement on the size and the major components of such a bill. So the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, along with the League of Minnesota Cities, has encouraged their member communities to request that the councils pass a resolution urging the legislature to get a bonding bill passed in September when they convene one more time for a session. This is very critical to us as a community because of the fact that we had requested $5.75 million in that bonding bill to help fund our wastewater treatment project. And when they agreed in theory as to what it would look like, we were going to be getting roughly $3.5 million out of the bonding bill. But that's still a nice amount of change, obviously, that would help us significantly with our $11.2 million project. And so I am recommending that the council consider passing this resolution in support of getting the legislature to pass the bonding bill, and this will get forwarded to Senator Westrom, Representative Anderson, as well as the majority leaders in both the House and the Senate, and the minority leaders in both the House and the Senate. Any questions?
Any questions or concerns?
No, I'll make a motion to approve Get Your Act Together resolution.
Second.
I agree with both of you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Make sure it's documented word for word in the minutes.
That's fine. That's fine, I'll wear it.
All right. All right, a resolution to continue with Stearns County prosecution contract.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is just a contract. It's not a resolution that the council has to pass. It's just an action item basically saying that our contract with the Stearns County Attorney's Office has expired, and we would have 2 years at a flat rate of $13,500. So they would keep our contract the same.
And Craig, you are happy with that?
They're working well.
Working great? That's good. That's good. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. CARES Act Relief Fund Loan.
So as Lisa talked about in her report, we actually received roughly $267,000 from out of the CARES Act relief funds. And Stearns County has said that if we set up a business relief program, that they would fund 25% of that, which would give us roughly $62,500 in addition to the money that we have. So the first thing that we did with our CARES Act funds is say, okay, where did we as a city spend money? You know, if you notice when you walk out into our reception area, as an example, there is it's actually glass up there that's in front of the reception area. We've had to purchase personal protective equipment and many other things. hand sanitizing stations, that type of thing. Our Public Works Department can't just have like face masks, they actually have to have fire rated ones, and different things like that. So once we subtracted out the expenses that we had roughly $250,000 that we could work with helping businesses. But when you looked at the CARES Act as a whole and what the county's application was for theirs, it was very specific as to the types of things that you could provide to that business. And one of the things that it did not do is it did not help a business with losing revenue. So what we did is we elected to have two different programs. One that's tied directly to the CARES Act funding, and that's going through the county, and that is the one that is $7,500 grant, which you go to the county website, you apply, and it covers the COVID-19 related expenses. So then what we're gonna do is we are allowed to take that money and essentially pay salaries under our general fund, which is what we're going to be doing, all our emergency service salaries. And then at the end of the year, we will do a transfer into MATA, or before the end of the year, transfer to MATA, because MATA actually has a fund sitting there that they can pay these business relief. The supplemental program, they can actually pay for that right now. And so we'll just make that transfer, and then what that allows us to do is really have a lot of flexibility with that second program so that we can really impact businesses on a greater level than what maybe the CARES Act could do. So, and just for your information, because I wanted to make really sure that this was something that was okay, we did talk to our auditors, and we also talked to Flattery and Hood, who is the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities attorneys, to get legal opinion on that. So that's where we are at with those programs. And as Lisa said, to date, we have quite a few people have taken advantage of it so far. So, any questions?
Are we good? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, the Reel and Pond Trail.
So on August 18th, the Parks and Rec Board toured the city parks and trails, which, by the way, if you haven't had a chance to get out and look, we've got substantially all the trails in town completed with overlays. They did Sock River Park today as the last one. So that's, kudos to Gary and his guys for getting out there and getting the prep work done. And then we have two pavement contractors here in town, and so we were able to get some really nice competitive bids and really get those trails in great shape. And so as we were doing our park tour a couple nights ago, we went up to the Reland Pond, which is, if you're familiar with where that is, that's kind of up on the hill on the north side, I guess you would call it. And it is really in need of repair. It's a storm sewer pond that was put in for that development, and around it is a trail. That trail is used, like many of our other trails, significantly. Kids use it a lot to walk to school, that type of thing. And so as long as we have two pavement contractors here in town, we felt that we would be able to get some competitive prices to be able to then finish that trail up. And then that's gonna put us in a position where essentially all of our trails are done. And they're gonna be in great shape now for the next 10 to 15 years. So what we have roughly $12,000, once we pay for those other ones, we have roughly $12,000 that is sitting in our trails fund. And we're not sure where the bid's gonna come in, but we would like to have the blessing of the council to move forward. And if you wanna put a do not exceed on there of 15,000 or whatever you would like, we're happy to do that as well. But we just feel like now is the time to get this done because we have two pavement contractors in town. And it's a recommendation of the park board that this happen as well. And Justin can speak more to it. Obviously, he was at the meeting the other night if he has anything to add, but I think he would agree. I think we just get it done.
Yep. We just figured then all the trails are the same. They're all done. That one behind that Reland Pond is pretty beat up, so.
I think you're correct in that if we don't do something with it very, very soon, it won't be salvageable.
I think
It'll be a
next year-
start over.
Next year bids are gonna be probably higher too, so just get it done now.
You know how many feet that trail is?
$1,900.
We must have a cost per foot of the other trails that we did.
About 86 cents.
About 86 cents a foot.
I roughly read some numbers. I would say we're gonna come around 14, 15.
Okay. I'd be okay going with a not to exceed 15. I think we have to have a cap on it, so always contractors both say we don't have time, give us a bit of 20 grand and
Yep.
get it done cheaper next summer or whatever, so.
How do you feel?
Don't bother me if you guys wanna put a cap on it, just, if it comes in at 15.8, what are you gonna do? I mean, he's just running numbers close, so, but we can do that.
Oh, we can call a quick special meeting if it's within $500, but I mean, you put it at 16, it comes at 16.2, then, you know, you
Right.
just gotta pick a cap and.
Gary, I think you said you had some holdover funds from previous?
Discretion on the numbers. Like I said, we kind of know what we got charged for the last trails.
Yeah.
And if it's within the means of what they charged us on the last trails, is that adequate to use our discretion? We're gonna be in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
I mean,
gonna
we're not-
conservative.
Higher than what the
I was just gonna
past
say, I
would be.
mean, we're not gonna,
No, we're not gonna say
if they come at 30,000, we're not gonna obviously.
Well, that's just
They're not gonna,
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
We'll make the motion on
Yeah,
that.
considering the condition that it's in now, I think it sounds like there's a fairly good price that's going to be submitted for this work project. And I just think we need to do it and do it now before that trail is not salvageable. So if it comes in under 18,000, is that reasonable? 18,000 or less?
If the trail, right.
Well, if we wait and come back, the contractors may not be back in
Yeah.
town. You know, they're both in town for the next 3 weeks.
Yep.
They got some work by church and they got some other private work to do.
Right.
Right.
And I did talk to the one I had looked at it today, and he said they'll be back in another 3 weeks or so. So they'll be
Right.
back within the next few weeks, both of them.
Now, these trails, it's not like a road where if it gets degraded too much, then you gotta do a total reconstruct of the base and everything. This is a
We gotta
trail,
start
so,
Removing like we did on
yeah.
Golden North.
Now, you're talking as overlay or remove?
Inch and a half compacted over.
Overlay,
What
okay.
we would do as staff is, there's some bad areas at the alligator.
Right.
We would take them all and return them like we did
Okay,
in Clark.
put new base down. Okay.
So they wouldn't hit that tomorrow, Gary, when they're doing wear code up there? It'd be like in 3 weeks?
Well, they would have to put it in their schedule, like I said.
Oh, okay.
I had one gentleman looked at it today for one company, and I got an appointment at 7 tomorrow to get a bid from another.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have the numbers, by tomorrow or Monday.
Okay.
I don't know, I'll make a motion that Gary uses his judgment. I think we all can trust him enough, but.
Yeah. As long as it's comparable.
Now, if you feel it's reasonable
Reasonable.
and comparable with the other trail work they've done, I would concur with going ahead and having it done.
Just for an example, when we bid out at Meadowlark Loop, this year it came in $1,500 under what we did last year. Last year was $6,440, and this year it came in at $4,900.
Right.
So the numbers are definitely down.
Right.
Okay. So you made a motion, is yours a second?
second
Okay, first and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so K is our add-on, it's a resolution to amend, it's for Oak Ridge Manor, doing some refinancing, and we're gonna be the pass-through for that.
Basically. Yeah, so in 2008, the city issued revenue notes on the acquisition and rehab of the 25-unit senior living facility known as Oak Ridge Manor. The note was purchased by Bremer Bank, and the city loaned the proceeds of the note to the borrower for this purpose. Pursuant to a loan agreement with the borrower has all the obligations, and the city has no obligations with respect to the payments on the note to Bremer Bank. The city assigned its interest in the loan agreement to Bremer Bank. We call this a conduit, so we're issuing what's called conduit debt. The borrower pays Bremer Bank directly for all payments due on the note. In 2014, the borrower, Oak Ridge Manor Limited Partnership, requested and Bremer Bank agreed to lower the interest rate on the note from 6.03% to 5%. The borrower has requested a further reduction in the interest rate to 3.75%, because that's where they're at right now. So this is essentially a conduit. We're issuing conduit debt, and it's a refi. The resolution authorizes the city officials to execute the note amendment on behalf of the borrower, which in this case is from actually Ridge Manor. Other than the change in the interest rate and the prepayment provisions, all other terms of the note and the terms of the 2008 issue remain the same. This reduction in the interest rate is considered a refunding, so the city will have to sign an additional certificate in IRS Form 8038. We have issued conduit debt in the past, and Tessica or Scott could probably speak to when we've done that. I know we've done it for this project, and I think we may have done it for one or two others as well, so. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a few of the big industrial
Yep.
in the past since I've been here too, so.
So that would be, Mr. Mayor, resolution number 20, if I did my math right, Pat, do you think it's 2020-42? 41. Okay.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve, please?
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. We are done with action items. On to old business. Rose Park update. Scott?
So you were correct, it is 42, I missed the other bonding, so yeah, it is 21.
42.
Yeah, excuse me. You know, in your agenda materials, we included a copy of a notice of violation that's going out to Melrose Community LLC. This is just the next step in the problem we've got with the manufactured home that's sitting out there, half complete. Apparently, there is some enforcement action taking place by the state for various state violations. That doesn't necessarily help us because we're expecting it would amount to a fine with some conditions. We still have that unit sitting out there, half completed. And so the next step is, again, treating it as a nuisance. I think we just discussed this at the last meeting. And under our ordinance, you know, like earlier I was talking about, typically Chief Mouse sends out a letter telling them what they need to do to fix it. This is a little bit more involved, so I drafted the letter, which is why it's a whole lot wordier than Chief Mouse's letters. But this will go out, to Melrose Community LLC, the owner of the park. And it's notifying them that they've got these violations out there and they've got to get the nuisance abated by the end of the month. And I'm not sure, did that go out today, yesterday? Yesterday. If you look at the letter, what we're saying, what we're asking for is the structure leaves town or it gets demolished and properly disposed of. It is conceivable that it could be worked on and constructed on and brought up to code. But I think these folks have had since last spring to try to put together plans and submit them for approval, and there's been no action. And so at this point, it's down to saying, you got to get it out of here. I'm not expecting that this will happen by the end of the month. My anticipation is that we'll be back here next month with another hearing and another proposed order from the council directing him to abate the nuisance. So that we're at the front end of the process here. So this is more of an update so that you know what's going on and what to expect. We've been fortunate, I think, the last year or two with the residents when have eventually complied with, these orders, either where the chief mouse tells them to, or when they get an order from the council. We haven't had to actually take one of these and get it enforced by the court for a while now. I think our luck is going to be running out. I'm anticipating that if the council issues its order next month, sometime in October, we'll be filing with the court to get enforcement order there. So I think this is the next step, but we've got several steps before it would go through. And like I say, the ultimate goal is to just get that removed from there. And if they're not willing to do it, then we want the court to authorize us to do it and assess the cost to the property.
So now if that happens, like if we hire a firm out of the cities to come and, demolish it on the spot, does that go in their assessments?
Yes.
So either way, we would get paid back before. So we can call like some company out of the cities that's
Yeah, you can,
pretty expensive and,
if you wanted to find a local,
I would.
operator, that's your call, but that's the goal, is let's, one way or another, we want it out of the city of Melrose.
Okay.
The cost, like I say, can be, and that has happened out in Rose Park.
Okay.
Before. A number of years ago, that time the county brought the action and took out a number of bad units and had them demolished and assessed the costs. And eventually they got paid. But nothing's gonna happen next week or next month. It'll take some time to work through the process.
Okay. All right.
Any questions? I think if you want more details, Lisa and Colleen have been very involved in this also.
Okay. And there's not an action we can take on it, we just gotta
No,
wait
it's
and
just-
see and,
Yep.
Well, and we're moving forward. We're committed. We have to continue
yes,
moving.
I agree. All right, thank you, Scott, for that. Then Shakey's Towing has applied for a permanent structure and removal of the temporary structure in a condition of issuance of a certificate of occupancy. This matter is tentatively being deemed complete at this time, assuming the construction of the shed and removal of the temporary structure continue progress as planned. So everything's moving forward so far with that. Ars Auto update, Lisa?
Ars Auto has continued to progress similarly. They've got their crushed asphalt in their below the auto sales area. They appear to be no longer parking vehicles in the grass. They don't yet have plants in the landscape planters. And as a side note, they inadvertently located their accessory structure in the signed easement for Casey's, which is on their property. Staff worked with both businesses, and Casey's has agreed to amend the easement to allow the shed in that location, acknowledging that if the shed gets inadvertently damaged by Casey's while working on their sign, that it would not be Casey's responsibility, it would be Arsado's responsibility. And Joe Arsenault has agreed to these terms. So basically, the matter is being deemed substantially complete at this time, although the planters are still empty. But
Okay. Thanks. All right. Dog kennel, who wants to visit with that one? Craig or?
I can kind of give you an update on that. So we were hoping after last month that we would be able to find an alternative, because the folks that had done our kennel for many, many years were no longer doing that as a part of their business. And you know, I will say I did have a very good conversation with the vet's clinic, and I completely understand why they want to get out of that business. It was never a moneymaker. It was actually, they lost a significant amount of money. It was really very much a community service that they provided to this community for 20 years. And so, or 30 years actually.
30 years.
And so we were looking at different alternatives for what we could do. And at this point, we don't have anything that we have come up with. However, I did speak to the Alexandria Area Humane Society, and they will take any dogs that we bring up to them. The problem with it being that far up, or that far west, is basically there's quite a distance to drive to get there, and so what person is going to come get their dog that far? That's a concern that they have, and then they'll be stuck with kind of the dogs, and then who pays for doing what they have to do for the dogs. The other thing, and that's part of what we talked about in the budget session with the fee schedule, is trying to deal with getting owners to pick up their dogs almost right away, so that we don't have this as an issue. And Craig can talk a little bit to what we've run into or how that's been going. Most of the time, we've done pretty good about getting owners and, that type of thing. But we still don't have sort of a long-term solution for this. I feel as a city administrator, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with having to have staff be the ones responsible for taking care of these animals. But I guess I don't have any really good solutions at this time. Craig can talk about it. We have had several dogs, and I think some of the owners have been found. Like, some just got off their chain, and those types of things. So you put something out there, and they were able to find the dogs, type of thing. But
Yeah, for the most part, the animals we are picking up are not wearing licenses or are not licensed. So that's the big benefit about the city having the city licenses and permits and those sorts of things, is if they're wearing their tags, we get them back almost immediately. We come back, reference a number in our book, and they get back home within a half hour, whatever it is. The last several that we've had, neighbors are recognizing them, or there's somebody that all of a sudden trots down the street 20 minutes after the call came in that oh, that's my dog that you picked up, kind of thing. So we have had some luck that way, but we're not overly confident that that'll last on all dogs. And that's where it gets into the issue of housing them, caring for them, those sorts of things. Generally what happens within the city is that all of their duties assigned, because we're almost a 24-hour department, falls on the police department. Our officers are not interested, nor do they feel it's part of our job duties to be dog caretakers on the weekends when dogs would get picked up, or until they can be brought to the vet clinic, or to the Humane Society, excuse me. So that's been probably as big of an issue related to this as it is trying to find somebody who's willing to maybe take on that role in the interim until they would go to the Humane Society after the 5 days, or whatever the story would, what the state law says or the story would be. The feelers we did put out after, when Mr. Clausen was running the meeting, he had asked, check with see if we can get 5-10 volunteers. The feelers we put out is there's people that are interested, but they don't want to do the long term. No, the 5 days is even too much for, it's fun to have someone else's dog for a short period of time, but when you're in a true fostering situation for 5 days, it's not exactly the situation they're interested in for that extended period of time. So that's been a difficult hurdle to cross at this point. So we would hope that we'd have 100% compliance in the in the licensing, but we obviously will be nowhere near that. Otherwise, every dog would be returned. We'd never need a place to house them at the vet clinic or anything else. So those have been some of the hurdles that we've been working on with Colleen and with the vet clinic, who, like I said, they've done great things for us for numerous years. It's just that it's not a good business model for them anymore.
Yeah, I know it's sort of a tough thing, but I just don't want that dog out on the street attacking some little kid. I mean, I think this is our responsibility as a city as much as it shouldn't be. Is there any way that we can do something here, you know, get Albany and Sauk involved? You know, a halfway house here. You know, I'm sorry, I know it's not your guys' job, but it may have to be. We just can't leave them go. I know I hate saying that. I'm just trying to find a way to, yeah.
Well, that's what one city is doing. If they don't have city tags, they just let it go. Neighboring city. Another one does have their public works department handle it until they can go up to the Humane Society. Disadvantages there, obviously, if it's the weekend, then they're calling in people for overtime. And that's where it always falls on all other duties assigned. Our officers are then taken from the road to go and take care of these things. You weren't here for the information I did put out there, Mr. Mayor, but with the standards put in place for the Animal Care Act from the League of Minnesota Cities, we would be doing a huge disservice by not having somebody committed to something like that. And I don't know that our department can make those commitments consistently, at least, if not probably be neglecting things in the long run. That's our concern, is we're not doing what would be expected of a kennel or of anybody else.
Yeah, it's a hard thing.
I think we need somebody to open up a dog kennel. So, I don't know. Takes quite a bit, probably not to. Gotta have the location.
Mm-hmm.
We'd almost have to construct something, you know, with a slope for cleaning access, you know, an actual structure with some insulation. I think you said something about lighting. It needs to have some sort of a window or at least something in the roof to allow light to penetrate enough of a run. And then you'd have to probably split it in half, so you've got probably no more than two.
Right. You could house two animals, or you could use one side for cleaning and then house the animal on the opposite side or whatever, disinfecting.
I'm guessing we can easily, between the fencing and putting up a structure, be $6,000 to $8,000 into some sort of a dog holding facility. And then we still have to figure out how we're staffing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, the only other option, like Mr. Clausen had proposed, is maybe a bigger outreach, you know, whether it's posted in the paper, whether it's something more social media reach. Like I said, I was just having conversations with people that I know are dog lovers that I thought would jump at the idea. Part of it is, though, they don't want them interacting with their own pets for diseases or potential personality conflicts between the animals. So that's their concern. A day or two they could handle, but anything longer than that they felt wouldn't work well with their lifestyles or their animals. So.
And we discussed possibly something in the area of the wastewater treatment plant, because somebody's going to bark. Sooner or later, somebody in an enclosure is going to bark, and you want them as far away from where people are trying to sleep and stuff as possible. You know, I don't know of another location in town that would even, you know, that the city has access to that would be suitable.
The old city dump is out of town quite a ways, but then that's, you know, more running for
Yeah.
visiting, feeding.
A little more hard, it's
stuff
hard
like
to,
that, so.
probably be harder to access in the wintertime, and
Yeah.
we still got the matter of, we've got to get some sort of water to this enclosure, this building.
Oh. It's not an easy answer, unfortunately.
Do you think, try to look out on Facebook or in the paper?
I think what would be a good attempt to do that, as well as I think if we start getting cost estimates together on what it would be to put up a structure that needs to be heated, needs to have some sort of cooling, lighting, whatever else that may be, at least then we know, are we coming in at a $5,000 project or a $10,000 project, plus then we gotta figure, I could talk with the officers more, see if that's something they're willing to, if it's only on the weekends and then the other staff handles it, I don't, but I know that the majority of us are not in favor of the long-term care. We don't mind picking the animals up. It's a matter of doing the cleanup, the feeding, the consistent hands-on stuff.
We'd have to just hire somebody on an on-call basis
Yeah.
to do that.
But yeah, I would agree that we can do a bigger reach on potential volunteers.
And
Scott, I just wonder what kind of a dog enclosure you can make out of a gently used mobile home. We may end up owning one of those 5-6 months from now.
now,
It probably wouldn't pass.
now, Gary, is that something that you guys can look at building?
Building, I think they were talking about using a current building for paying the wastewater.
Yeah, we had.
There was some ideas related to that. It'd have to be modified. I mean, it might have to be a completely separate structure, but we looked at what they did have at wastewater. It could work. It's a matter of then modifying that building.
Craig, someone was just saying that there's a place in Albany that just doesn't help.
Yeah, they don't want to. The problem with having a stray dog or anybody else's dog come in there is that they don't know the vaccination history. So if you do bring it to that place in Albany called the place of home or any other doggy daycare, they get the records up front saying they have all the shots, they have everything that says you're up to par. When you bring in an animal, we don't know that history. So if you intermix those with client dogs, that's when they get very nervous in the event there wouldn't be a bite or anything else.
So they're boarding 6 dogs, and then you bring in a stray, and all of a sudden 6 dogs are sick.
Right. Even if they can quarantine them because of kennel cough, one of the biggest concerns, it floats through the air and all of a sudden they infect their client dogs. They have very big ramifications down the road with the business then.
All right. Please look into that, and if you need more than a month, I understand. Just let's see what we can do for the citizens, okay?
Can do.
Thank you. All right, on the new business, Laserfish software proposal.
Admin staff have been reviewing some options to move to a more paperless environment. We currently use OpenText, or also called Alchemy, as our record retention, and more commonly, our network files or paper formats in our vault. Laserfish is a very common software among local governments, and it's actually the preferred vendor for our accounting and billing software. When we were looking for something, we wanted to be able to integrate with our system so everything ties together. The documents are all scanned and stored where every piece of it is readable, so it helps us to be able to search records easier, to tie everything together. It would also automate a lot of our record retention process, so when files are past that point, it can dispose of them, or it could notify us for example, contracts when they're coming up to be due. It can set some of those automatic reminders to help with some of that. Our quote, we did have this budgeted for 2020. We had it in our capital plan for this year at $14,700. Our revised proposal has an annual license fee of $5,400, and then for the integration, the clerk and administration module, the accounts payable module, and then some scanners that we would get, comes to $15,520.
more.
We are also looking at an HR module. I did not get the quote for that yet. I would anticipate it to be the same as the accounts payable, so roughly in that $2,000 to $3,000 range. We're also looking at some point for the workflows, which would allow kind of process streams to send information for review, for approval. I don't believe we'd add that at this point, but that's something maybe down the line. The Public Utility Commission has given approval to go ahead with this purchase at their last commission meeting. So we're looking for approval from the City Council.
All right. Did you guys have any questions?
No, you can only store so much paper for so long in so many locations, and what you're trying to do is reduce the amount of paper.
We're trying to reduce the amount of paper. Also to, with paper, there's a risk of having it filed in the wrong spot, of somebody getting the originals back, of making sure we have all of the information together, where at this point we could have, make sure that we're getting all of the proper information. For example, if a property, we could have all of their easements, their CUPs, their variances, utility, everything tied to that one parcel number, where we could pull up all that information at once. So it would save a lot of time and research going into reviewing things as well.
So an initial investment of about 18,000, and then you'd anticipate that 5,500 annually just for the licensing agreement and
Yes.
any updates?
Yep, and just for reference, we currently pay about $2,200 a year for our current system. So it would be a slight increase over that, but
Okay. Justin, you have any questions?
Nope.
Can I get a motion to approve then?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Can I get a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you for your work on this, Tessa. Then information items, Utilities Commission meeting minutes, schools and training. Yeah, I agree. All right, we're on to, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Can I get a
Second.
second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, meeting adjourned.